Joe, would you do me a favour? Remind Calvin from me when I go up to aerobics.
You're joking, aren't you, Janice?
Oh, please, Joe, be no trouble. He's asleep.
I'm not Mary Poppins, I'm having a pint.
Please, Joe, got to get me figure back. His dad won't look at me if I don't lose my belly.
You don't know who the dad is?
No, though on a fancy for his dad won't look at me.
Bloody hell!
A brand new comedy from the co-writer of The Royal Family. Early Doors, next Monday at 9:30 on BBC Two.
We'll be joining BBC News 24 in a moment. First on BBC One, tonight's weather.
Hello there. If you've seen the news earlier on, you'll realise just how lucky we are in this country. We certainly don't get that sort of weather like they've had just recently in the United States, those really vicious tornadoes. At least 54 of them hit the Midwest on Sunday night, and it was mostly Kansas and Missouri where the effects were worse. Indeed, you can see it here on the radar. Dark crimson colours where the heaviest rain was, and Pierce City is the area where the tornadoes were really at their worst. Other areas had some heavy rain, like Sioux Falls, for instance, at 45 millimetres in just a few hours. That weather system was developing all the while as it headed up towards the Great Lakes. This hook of cloud here was those tornadoes that moved across the Midwest, and the whole thing is now heading in towards the eastern seaboard. There's another weather system in the middle of the Atlantic, but what's interesting is this one over Europe. That's quite an active weather system. It's produced some thunderstorms, and the reason is exactly the same as those tornadoes in the United States. We have two air masses. We have the warm, humid air over Europe, and we have the cooler, drier, fresher air over the British Isles. And where they mix, that's the battlefront, and that's where the heavy rain and thunderstorms and tornadoes can occur. We also, of course, see large falls of temperature as those weather fronts go through. Biarritz, 31 on Sunday, down to 13 on Monday, and the average at this time of the year is about 29 or so. And of course, again, along that weather front, you saw quite a lot of thunderstorms during the course of the afternoon, and for a very different reason. There were some thunderstorms over Turkey. Now, that particular weather system is going to head on a little bit further eastwards, taking some pretty unsettled weather into France and much of Spain and Portugal during the course of tomorrow, whereas the eastern part of Europe and the eastern Mediterranean enjoys some sunshine. Now, back to this country, we have quite a nasty area of low pressure moving away from Scotland, has produced gale force winds and a fair number of showers. Most of those showers are tending to fade away, but I think some light ones, reasonably well scattered ones, will last right the way through the night. But further south, with clearing skies and light winds, ending up on the chilly side at 5 degrees, might just about be a touch of frost on the grass. Tomorrow, for much of the country, it's going to be dry. There'll be some sunshine, best of sunshine to begin with. There will be some cloud developing for a time around the middle of the day, may produce the odd light shower in northern areas, and still those showery bursts of rain across Scotland. They'll take a while to fade away, but eventually they will, but only because more general cloud will come into much of Ireland and that northwestern half of Scotland in the latter part of the day, bringing again another spell of wet and windy weather and keeping the temperatures down 12 degrees or so. In the brightness in the south, a warm afternoon at 18 degrees. On Wednesday, we're going to keep a frontal system meandering across Ireland and much of Scotland, keeping it wet and windy there. England and Wales not doing too badly. The sunshine quite hazy in the north and west, otherwise dry and bright and reasonably warm. But we will have our turn in the southeast with some thundery rain showing up on Thursday. Other parts of the country become fresher and breezier with some sunshine, but a fair number of blustery showers. And by Thursday, I think the thundery rain will have moved away, so it's a case of sunshine and showers across most parts of the country, heaviest and most frequent in that northwestern corner. That's all from me. A very good night to you.
What are you talking about? It doesn't sound anything like me.
Nancy Dallaglio has broken off her relationship with England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson and has started dating former England rugby captain Lawrence Dallaglio. She said that should the couple marry, she'd want to keep her surname as well as taking his, making her Nancy Dallaglio.
The Big Impression, Friday at 9 on BBC One.
See what I mean? Rubbish.
There's no denying it.
Oh, get help! Call 999!
Coast Guard rescue.
Coast Guard rescue.
Coast Guard helicopter thermos and C6 requires prompt medical attention.
We'll scramble the helicopter to you now.
Rescue Hotel Lima has recovered the casualty from the lifeboat.
Can you please convey our thanks to all the team involved today?
If you like to be beside the sea, be sea smart and save us from saving you.
He's a combination of a shrink and a priest.
These two are like the two old boys who used to surf at the back of the Muppets.
They've got massive financial pressures behind us.
The role of management is to actually make a solid decision which lasts.
You think you're talking about the heirs to the Roman Empire more than you were taking on a manager's job.
Jerry Robinson arrives on BBC Two, shaking up family firms with his business genius.
Jerry, you'll think we're an absolute bunch of idiots.
The new series, I'll Show Them Who's Boss.
You couldn't run a ship like this, you couldn't run a country like this.
Wednesday at 9 on BBC Two.
Through the night now on BBC One with BBC News 24 and Martine Croxall.
Ministers from the G8 group of the world's leading industrialised countries who've been meeting in Paris say the Al-Qaeda network remains a threat. The ministers agreed to use the latest computer technology in the fight against political violence and organised crime. The technology would identify people by their fingerprints and by scanning their eyes. An Israeli settler is reported to have been killed and 2 people injured when Palestinian gunmen opened fire on their car in the West Bank. The incident happened hours after a US special envoy held talks with the new Palestinian Prime Minister Abu Mazen. Abu Mazen has said he will try to persuade militant groups to stop attacks against Israelis. Colombian government officials say a regional governor and a former minister have been killed by the left-wing rebel group known as FARC. The governor, Guillermo Gaviria, and a former defence minister, Gilberto Echeverri, were kidnapped while on a peace march in the northwest of the country last year. Kidnappers have released the daughter of one of Argentina's wealthiest men after the payment of a ransom. 19-year-old Florencia Macri was released just outside Buenos Aires after being kidnapped and held for almost a week. Kidnapping has been on the rise in Latin America, especially since many countries in the region began experiencing severe economic difficulties.
Florencia Macri, alive and apparently well. Her abduction 6 days ago had been one of the most high-profile Argentina's seen. But on Monday, she was released, left at a taxi office on the outskirts of Buenos Aires. The kidnappers demanded $1.5 million. Her family say they paid less.
We paid much less than the newspapers are saying, but we're not talking about it because it only encourages more kidnappings.
Florencia Macri's brother is the boss of Argentina's Boca Juniors football club, running for mayor of Buenos Aires, and himself the victim of a kidnap a decade ago. Kidnapping's a growth industry in Latin America, and since last year's economic crisis, Argentina's been no exception. Actors, football players, businessmen and their families have all been targets. Argentina's wealthy are increasingly fearful. Matt Prodger, BBC News.
And a reminder of the main news again this hour. Talks between President Mugabe and senior African leaders to try to end the political and economic crisis in Zimbabwe have finished with little sign of a breakthrough. This is BBC News.
Morning, it's tornado season, as you may well have already heard. And of course it's the States that gets the worst of them. 54 reported in the Midwest on Sunday, early Monday our time, and Kansas, Missouri worst hit. In fact, the town of Pierce City was virtually obliterated. They were that vicious. The source for this sort of activity is the warm air of the Gulf of Mexico. It's drawn up and it's mixed in this time with a Californian storm, one that came from the Pacific across California. And even now, there will be some tornadoes, of course, a huge area of rain, if you imagine the scale of the state, all the way from the Midwest across the lakes to the eastern seaboard. Now, I said the source for this, the energy from this, is from the south, from the Gulf of Mexico. I take you across to Europe because, although we don't get the same devastating tornadoes, we often draw our air from the south. Usually it's the Sahara, and we call this sort of thing the Spanish plume, and it's engaged in here. It's been very, very warm recently. For example, 33 in Rome. We briefly got that at the end of the weekend, I think it was. We got 23 degrees, didn't we, in London? It was down to 16 on Monday, so it's cooler and drier. We're on that side of it. Now, we might actually pick up some of this warmth on Thursday, but it's not going to be for blue skies and sunshine. It'll be mixed in, I'm afraid, with the Atlantic air, and we'll get rain from it, though probably not tornadoes. But being on the wrong side, the cold side of that air, it's a cold night. It's not quite as ferocious as was the case, say, 6 hours ago. We might find the Highlands quiet enough to get down to 4 degrees and about 5 maybe in central England. That's the low driving it. Now, this is what it's like overnight. Take it ahead a few hours and the morning starts with it off towards the coast of Norway. And then briefly you've got pressure rising, which means a good day. Good in that it'll be dry, fine and sunny, quite nice for spring. A few showers left in Scotland, a few showers maybe picking up somewhere over northern England sometime during the middle of the day. And the day ends, I'm afraid, again going downhill with more rain and a certain amount of wind for western Scotland and maybe Northern Ireland just after dark. But it'll be quiet into the day for the rest. This, of course, has been wonderful spring weather, and it's meant the pollen levels are up. It's tree pollen at this time of year, and the levels are only high in the southeast of England and East Anglia, which means for the racecourse at Bath and Chester, pollen levels are low. It should be a fine day. Finding quite warm actually, 16 to 18 degrees again. Only about 11 to 13 where it remains fairly breezy, but not as bad as yesterday for northern Britain. And compare this with the conditions in Madrid. Yes, we're doing better than Spain. For this particular football match, Real Madrid and Juventus, 8 degrees in the rain. Now on Wednesday the rain has sunk a bit further south across Scotland and Northern Ireland again. England and Wales should get away with a fine and relatively warm if breezy day. But this rain that's coming in from the Atlantic is heading south, and so for the first time in a few days the rain will start falling across the centre of England, in fact possibly down to the south coast. We might get that touch of thunder with the warm air just caressing Kent, but it's a low risk I suspect. And then it's sunshine and showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland. The wind does up once again. And in fact, that more or less sets the scene. We're going to get these spells of wet weather and then showery weather running through probably until next weekend. And here it is in summary.
I'm Peter Jennings for ABC News in New York. On BBC News 24 in just a moment, the news that Americans get about the world.
World News Tonight, next.
I've always believed in the promotion of the noble art of conversation.
How do you expect the Iraqis to accept? Do you admire the way Tony Blair's handled the war?
This is right. We have to do this. We must see it through. I believe he's right to do that.
4 opposition members of parliament were arrested and beaten in police custody.
Two opposition members.
Don't use big words, just listen to me. What was the hurry to attack Iraq?
Hard-hitting Hard Talk, weeknights 11:30, BBC News 24.
24 hours a day.
The Prime Minister has made a statement on the postponement of the Northern Ireland elections.
As it breaks.
150 people are feared to have died in an earthquake in Turkey.
Whenever it breaks.
The suicide bomber who killed himself and 3 others in Tel Aviv this morning was from Britain.
BBC News 24.
Good morning, this is BBC News 24. I'm Martine Croxall. In a moment, ABC's World News Tonight. But first at 1:30, a summary of the main news. A delegation of senior African leaders has been holding talks in Zimbabwe in a new effort to resolve the political and economic crisis there. It's believed the delegation, led by South African President Thabo Mbeki, may be trying to persuade President Robert Mugabe to stand down. But after several hours of separate talks with Mr Mugabe and the main opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai, there was little official sign of progress. The United Nations nuclear watchdog says it's asked the United States to allow inspectors into Iraq to investigate reports of looting at nuclear facilities. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Mohammed El-Baradei, has yet to receive a response from Washington. America says it's preparing to free up to 15 prisoners of the Afghan war from its high-security prison on Guantanamo Bay. Defense Department sources say they'll be released within the coming week, but they've not disclosed the ages or nationalities of the prisoners. There are currently more than 600 prisoners being held on the base. 9 of them are British. The veteran anti-apartheid campaigner Walter Sisulu has died at the age of 90. He spent 26 years in prison with Nelson Mandela during the struggle for liberation. He continued to play a leading role in the African National Congress when Mandela became president. Nelson Mandela paid tribute to one of his closest friends, saying, "His absence has carved a void. A part of me is gone." Coalition forces say they've captured one of Iraq's top biological weapons scientists. 49-year-old Huda Amash, who was nicknamed Mrs. Anthrax by US intelligence officials, is alleged to have played a key role in rebuilding Baghdad's biological weapons program after the 1991 Gulf War. Police have drafted in specialist divers to hunt for the missing 7-year-old Daniel Entwistle. CCTV film shows Daniel leaving a shop near his home in Great Yarmouth on Saturday, shortly before he vanished. More than 100 police officers are continuing to search the area near his home. Daniel's mother, Paula Entwistle, says the family's trying to remain strong despite his disappearance.
We both miss you, and you're not in trouble. And if anybody knows anything, please let the police know anything, even if it's stupid. Like I said, something, just, if you've seen anything that's suspicious, just ring the police, because you're not wasting the time. They're all there looking for Daniel. They've got people out there now looking for Daniel. Just, if you see anything, just ring the police. We just want Daniel home. Please.
A 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of the murder of 18-year-old Laura Torn. Laura was last seen after leaving a pub in the Lincolnshire village of Oaston Ferry near Scunthorpe over a week ago. Police have been searching the area close to her home for more clues. Last week, one of her boots was discovered on the bank of the River Trent. Senior members of the Labour Party have continued their efforts to avert a backbench rebellion over plans to give certain hospitals more power. Tomorrow, MPs will debate whether to create about 30 foundation hospitals, which would be allowed to set their own budgets and decide their clinical priorities. The Labour Party chairman, Ian McCartney, denied claims that the proposals would leave underperforming hospitals by the wayside. The NHS is accused today of failing millions of people suffering from asthma. The National Asthma Campaign says their research reveals 3/4 of the 5 million people with asthma in the UK could be living virtually symptom-free if there was proper healthcare management. The charity is launching a 10-point charter outlining the rights people with asthma should expect to receive from the NHS. Drivers will today find out just how much they'll have to pay to use Britain's first pay-as-you-go motorway. The 27-mile Midlands Expressway is aimed at relieving congestion on the M6 around Birmingham. It's thought car drivers will be charged £2 and lorry drivers £5 to use the road. Privately built at a cost of £485 million, it'll open in January next year. Time for all the day's sports news now. Here's Chris Hollings.
Hello again. Mark Williams is the world snooker champion of 2003 after defeating Ken Doherty in a thrilling final at the Crucible. Doherty fought back from 11 frames to 5 down to go into the evening session level, but the world number one found his form in the evening session to claim the title.
Nerves of steel were needed in Sheffield with Mark Williams and Ken Doherty locked at 12-all going into the final session. It was a tense start with both players showing signs of nerves. Williams missed a black when he had a real chance of securing the first frame of the evening. But the world number one held his nerve after several safety exchanges to clinch the frame and lead 13-12.
Looks to have played it well.
But Doherty came straight back with some truly world-class play to level again. It just couldn't be any closer.
It's very close. What a shot! Unbelievable!
56. The Welshman took the next to restore his lead, but then missed his opportunity to establish a 2-frame advantage. The Dubliner was back at the table, and once again the match was all square at 14-all going into the mid-session interval. After a trip to the practice table during the break, Williams stormed through the next frame with a break of 120 to re-establish his lead once more. But Doherty still wouldn't give in, and as he's done so often in the championship, he came back again to level at 16 all. However, as the nerves took hold, it was Williams who took hold of the match, easily securing frame 34, putting himself just one away from a second world title. And thanks to this double, the Welshman went on to take the one opportunity he needed to finally overcome the stubborn resistance of the Irishman and clinch the biggest prize in snooker.
It was unbelievable. I mean, the atmosphere out there in the end, was electric. And, to be fair, a lot of people would have thought Ken was going to win when it was so close because I had such a big lead. But, somehow I managed to hold myself in there. I don't know how. It was just, I was playing on instinct most of the time.
So with the world crown to add to his UK and Masters titles, there's now no disputing the best player in the game. Lucy McKechnie, BBC News.
Wimbledon is not that far away, but Tim Henman continues to struggle as he looks to bounce back from a shoulder injury. The British #1 was comprehensively beaten in the first round of the Italia Masters in Rome, going down to the Argentine clay court specialist Guillermo Correa in straight sets, 6-2, 6-1. Cricket news now, and more injury worries for the England pace bowler Darren Gough. The Yorkshireman was hoping for a recall to England's one-day squad for the summer after missing last season due to a knee injury, but Gough was forced to limp out of Yorkshire's National League match against Essex with a hamstring injury. Now boxing, and the next opponent for Lennox Lewis looks set to be the Ukrainian fighter Vitaly Klitschko. Lewis hasn't fought since his defeat of Mike Tyson last June, but now Klitschko's promoter has said that a contract has been signed with Lewis's management for a fight to be held before December for the Britain's WBC heavyweight. And that's all the sport for now.
And that's the summary. I'll be back in 10 minutes with the latest headlines. Now on BBC News 24, a look at the world through American eyes in ABC's World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, as seen across the States a couple of hours ago.
On World News Tonight, tornadoes killed dozens of people in the Midwest and the South.